So SAFTU has finally elected new leaders after its week-long conference. The new office bearers include President Ruth Ntlokotse, as well as Treasurer Lecogo Motshwari, I beg your pardon. Zwelinzima Vavi is also back. He's been re-elected as the General Secretary. The IEC concluded the voting yesterday morning after SAFTU and NUMSA reached a deadlock on the fate of the 4 suspended officials. Joining us now for, I guess, a sense of what the way forward looks like, given how this conference has played out, is the newly elected President, Ruth Ntlokotse. Thanks very much indeed for your time. It's great to have you on the program. And I guess congratulations are in order, especially because of what it's taken to get here, in a context where there were real worries about whether the conference itself would be concluded. So much also being said about the fact that there are 4 women for the first time in leadership positions for SAFTU, you being among them. But tell us, why do you think it's taken so long to get here?
Thank you so much, and good morning to the viewers. It is correct indeed that we are coming from a Congress, and I must indicate that the Congress has elected 4 women out of 6. And we are hoping that even other affiliates and other organizations, they will follow suit. Because of SAFTU, we are equally concerned and serious about advancing the emancipation of women. The Congress started on Monday and we ended it yesterday. And it is correct that we had a discussion because of before the Congress, there were suspension of the 4 national office bearers who were suspended by the National Executive Committee. So among other issues, the Congress was meant to discuss whether the suspension of those 4 national office bearers was, whether the NEC acted within its powers. And because of the limitations that our constitutions have, I mean, we are all mindful of the fact that SAFTU is a new federation, and this was our new Congress. So we still have some gaps in our constitution. So whether those suspended national office bearers, were they supposed to stand for the elections or not, there's no provision in our constitution. But what is nice about our constitution, it does give a provision that in an event there are issues that there's a deadlock, it gives a way forward on how to handle such issues. So there were 2 motions and they were subjected for a vote. We had to vote over that matter. And the Congress reaffirmed the fact that the NEC acted within its powers, meaning that their suspensions was upheld. And over and above that, there was a discussion as to whether should they participate in the elections. And I must indicate that the Congress eventually agreed that they can participate in the elections. They participated in the elections, and to such an extent that Comrade, the National Treasurer, she's being reinstated, and Comrade Thabo, who was the former second deputy president, he's now being elected as the first deputy president of SAFTU. So, yeah.
Yeah. What then is to be made about the merits of their suspensions to begin with, especially those 2 who are now essentially elected in leadership positions? What do we say about the case of their suspension?
Remember, the National Executive Committee has actually instituted a process for investigation. The National Finance Committee was tasked to investigate those allegations. And the last National Executive Committee that we had, they presented the preliminary report, and they were also instructed by the NEC to go back because there were some limitations and gap in terms of their report, that they need to go back and conduct some further investigation. So we are hoping that among other issues that they were supposed to investigate was to get the side of those comrades, those who were suspended. So now that they are back, the comrades, I think the process it will move a bit faster, although it's not all of them, in terms of bringing this matter to finality. Because of the preliminary report, it does indicate that this matter can be resolved in the next National Executive Committee. So I think their presence will actually speed up the process of the investigation.
So as you and I speak, I think it's safe to say there is a cloud hanging over their heads, despite them being elected into these leadership positions.
Yes.
Certainly not ideal, is it?
I think the Congress took a stock on that, and they felt that it was proper to unify the federation, and hence they are back. So I don't see any cloud hanging. I don't see any obstacle in their presence until such time the matter is being finalized by the National Executive Committee.
What happens in a context where that investigation has adverse findings against them?
I think the National Executive Committee will give guidance on how to handle that matter. I think it's a bit premature for me to make any determination pertaining that.
Okay, and it doesn't end there, of course. We know Zwelinzima Vavi himself has been facing a whole slew of allegations. In fact, he spoke quite openly yesterday in the media conference that you guys gave in the afternoon about how he is hurt by what people have alleged, have said he's alleged to have done. Those are the words he used. He's been hurt by what's taken place. And he, too, is still undergoing that investigation, or a separate one, I imagine. And given, I guess, even just strategically how important his role is, how worried are you that questions around his name may dent the work that you guys need to do moving forward?
I think the preliminary report that was presented by the to the National Executive Committee by the National Finance Committee, it's not something that, although it might be a bit preemptive for me to talk about the investigation, but it's something that it's not that significant that we need to worry about at the present moment until such time the investigation is being concluded. That's when we can be able to talk about the allegations made against his name. But for now, I think it will be important that we need to respect the processes of the investigation. And then until such time the final report is being presented, we can be able to talk about that. But we have the preliminary report at our disposal, but we are unable to talk about its content at the moment.
What do you mean you don't think this is that significant at the moment? I mean, you know, the allegations themselves are pretty serious.
Hence, I'm saying that I don't want to divulge until such time we have the conclusion of this matter. That's when we can be able to go publicly and pronounce our position pertaining that. But we do have the preliminary report. We want to leave no stone unturned on this investigation, so that as the Federation, because we believe in transparency, we believe in accountability, we believe in openness, we want, as and when the final report is being presented to us, we can be able to talk from facts as presented by the National Finance Committee.
Many people, of course, watched the conference, especially over the first 3 days, when there were really, let's call them dramatic developments. With the benefit of hindsight, now that you're able to look back, do you think Congress could have done things differently?
Like I said earlier on, that with the limitation of our constitution, because there are some provisions that are not there in the constitution. And, you know, with democracy, you need to allow people to air their views. And yes, I fully agree that you could have done things differently. But one thing that we pride ourselves is that discussions were very robust. All affiliates were given an opportunity to express their views. And at the end of the day, the conclusion was made democratically so on how to deal with those the areas where there is some disagreement.
Max Shabalala, who occupies the position you're currently in, or occupied it before you came in, has already come out to say that it's not necessarily ideal that there are any individuals in leadership positions who, quite frankly, have, again, question marks around their name. He does, however, emphasize the importance of still supporting those members. This is taking place in a context where already there are concerns that unions generally in the country are losing resonance with workers, given how few workers are actually part of organized labor, as it were. Again, is that something that keeps you up at night when you consider the problems you're facing internally, but the ground you still need to cover in labor?
I think the report to the Congress, it made an assessment about the workers that are not covered, that are not belonging to any trade union movement. And about 76% of workers are not belonging to the trade union movement. And there were some recommendations that the Congress spoke about, and we are going to focus on the informal sectors. We are going to, because of, the manner in which we used to prioritize those traditional sectors. And the Congress was very clear and came to a conclusion that we need to change our way of organizing. We need to concentrate on recruitment, and we need to make sure that these workers that are not belonging to any trade union movement, they must join the trade union movement. We are still firm as SAFTU that the trade union movement are relevant, especially now during these austerity measures, because what workers are confronted with currently, they need unity of workers. They need the strong workforce, they need the strong working class, so that they can be able to challenge the onslaught that is being orchestrated against workers. So it is very much important that workers, they should belong to